There's a sound that changes your life. It's not a crash or a scream. For me, it was a buzz. The soft, digital chirp of a text message sent from the one man I believed would never let my world fall. My father. The words were simple, brutal, final. Asterisk. I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. Asterisk, 28 years of being a son, evaporated into the cold light of a smartphone screen. My name is Alex Thorne. And this all started just 1 week before that buzz, on a night that felt like any other. It was Thursday. Family dinner. My father, Robert Thorne, would always joke, calling it the Last Supper. He'd pour an expensive glass of wine, laugh his booming laugh, and say, "Well, boys, let's enjoy this one. Could be our last." He was talking about business, the markets, a dramatic flourish. I never thought he was prophesying the end of us. Our house was a monument of glass and steel, cold and perfect. My father was the king of it, self-made millionaire, titan of industry, my hero, and my boss. I worked for him at Thorne Industries, but I'd earn my place. I wasn't like my older brother, Marcus. Marcus was the idea guy, all charm and smiles. I was the one in the trenches, building the foundations under his dreams. That night, Marcus was holding court. "The Singapore deal is basically done, Dad," he said, swirling his wine. "Just needs your signature. It's a gold mine." I remember pushing my food around my plate. Something felt off. "I've seen the projections," I said, trying to sound neutral. "They're incredibly optimistic. The regulatory hurdles alone, we haven't accounted for them." The air went cold. My father's eyes, usually so warm for Marcus, turned to me. They were flint. "Your brother has a vision, Alex. You have a spreadsheet. Sometimes you need to leap, not crawl." My mother, elegant and quiet, just patted my hand under the table. A tiny, secret gesture of solidarity. I let it go. I always let it go. Because family was everything. This company was our legacy. After dinner, my father asked to see me in his study. The inner sanctum. My heart swelled. This was where real talk happened. He stood by the window, looking at his kingdom of city lights, and handed me a brandy. "Alex," he said, his back to me. "You're the backbone of this company. Marcus has the spark, but you're the anchor. That's why I need you to do something for me." He turned, his face etched with what I saw as noble worry. "The Singapore deal, it requires a show of faith. A gesture. I need to move all our personal assets, the family trust, everything, into the company account. Temporarily. 60 days, max. It's just for the banks to see. But the authorizations, they're in your name as co-trustee. I need you to sign." He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You're the only one I trust with this. Marcus can't know the specifics. He'd get nervous." He gave me that famous grin. "This is the big one, son. The one that secures your future. Are you with me?" What could I say? This was my father. This was my proof of worth. "Of course I'm with you," I said, my voice thick. He handed me a folder. "Sign here, here, and here." I signed. I signed away the security of my entire family, believing I was building its future. He pulled me into a brief, hard hug. "That's my boy." I walked out of that study feeling 10 feet tall. The chosen son. The trusted anchor. I had no idea I had just lovingly signed my own betrayal. The money moved on Friday. Silent. Seamless. And by the next Thursday, I was in my office, buried in paperwork, trying to force Marcus's fantasy to make sense. My phone buzzed. I flipped it over. Asterisk, I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. Asterisk. The world didn't so much shatter as simply stop. The noise of the office faded into a muffled roar. Those 3 words, I disown you, they're an ancient, cruel weapon. They mean you are not of me. And the cold follow-up, talk to my lawyer, the emotional atom bomb, then the sterile cleanup crew. Don't talk to me. Talk to my representative. My hands went numb. 1,000 questions screamed in my head. Asterisk why? What did I do? Asterisk, but underneath the shock, that quiet, Terrible voice whispered. The money. Before I could think, my thumb moved. A robotic, primal response. I typed one word in reply. Asterisk, okay. Asterisk. And I hit send. What else was there? He didn't want my questions. He wanted my disappearance. So I gave him the first part. I sat there, a statue of ruin, for an hour. Maybe two. Then the phone rang. Marcus. His voicemail was cold. Alex. Dad told me. It's bad, okay? What you did. Really stupid. I don't know why you'd steal from the company. From us. Don't come back. Your access is shut down. For what it's worth. I'm disappointed, man. Steal? The accusation was so monstrous it choked the air from my lungs. That was their story. The loyal son turned thief. It was perfect. It justified everything. The shock finally melted, replaced by a new sensation. A cold trickle in my veins, hardening into a glacier. It was clarity. And it was rage. They weren't just casting me out. They were burying me under a lie to cover their tracks. That trust in the study was a setup. He needed my signature. And now he needed a scapegoat. I had volunteered with my own pen. He took my family, my name, my reputation, and made me the villain. The glacier cracked. And a plan formed. Not of tears, but of silence. Of stillness. And of withdrawal. He said talk to his lawyer. I said okay. But first, I had to see the damage. I went home, to my small apartment my father always mocked. The silence was deafening. I opened my laptop, my hands steady now, the fear burned away by cold fire. I logged into the Thorne Family Holdings portal. Co-trustee, Alexander J. Thorne. I navigated to the master account, the one I'd moved our fortune into. The balance should have been nearly $15 million. The screen showed $422.18. They left the change. $14,867,000 gone. Transferred this morning to a Cayman Islands account I couldn't touch. An account controlled by Robert, and I soon found Marcus Thorne. There was no Singapore deal. It was a story. A lie to get me to open the vault. They took everything and left me holding the empty bag and the blame. The perfect crime. I leaned back. The last piece of the trap snapped shut. They thought I would break. They thought I would run or beg. They forgot one thing. When you disown someone, you renounce your claim. You sever the tie. You set them free. You no longer have any right to their loyalty, their obedience, or their mercy. I looked at the screen. At the pathetic $400. I looked at the text on my phone. I disown you, and I whispered to the empty room. Okay, Dad. You want a lawyer? You'll get one. But first you get a reckoning. The next morning, I put on my best suit and went to the bank. I asked for Ms. Riggs, the senior manager who had handled our family's affairs for years. She greeted me with a tight, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. Alex. I heard about the, situation. I'm so sorry. What exactly did you hear, Linda? I asked, my voice calm. She shifted, uncomfortable. Your father's office called. They said there was an internal issue, that your authority might be in question pending litigation. Did they provide a court order? A formal revocation of my trusteeship or powers of attorney? Well, no, not yet. It was just a... Then my authority stands, I said, laying my passport and driver's license on her desk. I need you to pull the complete transaction ledger for the Thorne Family Holdings master account from the moment of my authorization last week to right now. And I need the destination information for the wire that left yesterday. She hesitated, caught between past loyalty and present protocol. But the law was on my side. My name was still on the accounts. She turned to her computer, her typing slow. The printer hummed. She handed me the pages. Seeing the numbers on paper, the cold, hard evidence of the transfer to Horizon Cayman Holdings, made it real in a new way. The theft was documented, in black and white, by the bank itself. Can you see who the signatories are on the destination account? I asked. She looked, her face growing pale. It's Robert Thorne and Marcus Thorne. Thank you, Linda, I said, gathering the papers. One more thing. My father's personal accounts, the ones where I hold a durable power of attorney, are those authorizations still active? She checked, her eyes widening slightly. Yes, Alex. They are. He never revoked them. A door, I thought. A tiny, forgotten door left unlocked. I see. Thank you for your help. I didn't withdraw a single dollar that day. The money was already gone. Instead, I withdrew the truth. I took those papers to a small, discreet firm downtown, to a lawyer named Elena Vance. She had a reputation for being ruthless but ethical. I told her everything. I showed her the text message, the bank ledgers, the fake Singapore deal memos I'd saved. She listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned forward. They've played a very dirty game, she said. But they've made two critical mistakes. One, they left a perfect paper trail. And two, they emotionally provoked you. A calm, methodically angry client is the most dangerous kind. We don't scream. We document. We maneuver. And we wait for them to think they've won. With the last of my personal savings, not a cent from the family accounts, I hired Elena and a forensic accountant named Ben. We set up a war room in a rented office. We became ghosts, working in silence. Ben traced the shell company. It was a dead end, but the path to it led back to our family lawyer, Mr. Aldrich. The same man my father told me to talk to. He had set it all up. Meanwhile, the public story began to leak. Thorne Industries heir suspected in major embezzlement. I saw the headlines online. My face wasn't there, but the whispers in my old circles were deafening. I was a pariah, a thief. The pain was a physical ache, but I let it fuel the glacier inside me. Then I found my weapon. Buried in the old trust documents from my grandfather was a clause. A rainy day fund, a separate account he'd set up for me when I was born. My father had never known about it, or had forgotten. It wasn't fortune, $250,000, but it was freedom. It was ammunition. We used it to turn the screws. Marcus was the weak link. Ben found his secret debts, a failing nightclub venture he'd poured money into. We applied pressure. Anonymously, of course. A tipped-off creditor called in a loan. A potential investor for his club mysteriously backed out. We watched as Marcus, always so smooth, began to fray in public. His smiles grew strained. He snapped at reporters. 2 weeks after the text, Mr. Aldrich finally called. His voice was syrup over steel. Alex, this is regrettable. Your father is heartbroken, but he's willing to be reasonable. We can settle this quietly. You sign a statement acknowledging you borrowed the funds under stress, you repay a symbolic amount, and you walk away with a severance. No criminal charges. You can start fresh somewhere else. It was a trap. A way to get a confession on record. With Elena whispering in my ear on a mute button, I played the part. I sounded shaken, hesitant. I need to think about it, Mr. Aldrich. It's a lot. Don't think too long, Alex, he said, a threat now coloring the syrup. The offer expires. Buying time. That's all we needed. Because while I talked to Aldrich, Ben was digging into his finances. And we found it. Overbilling. Inflated fees for years, covered by my father's desire for discretion. We had our leverage. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. My mother. She called me from a blocked number, her voice a broken whisper. Alex, they tell me such terrible things. They show me papers, but my heart doesn't believe them. Can we meet? Somewhere no one knows. We met in a quiet botanical garden. She looked older, frail. I showed her everything. The bank statements, the evidence of the shell company, the proof that the Singapore deal was fiction. I showed her my father's text. As she read it, her hands trembled, but her eyes hardened into something I'd never seen before. A mother's fury. He used me, she whispered. He had me sign things, said it was for my protection. He was isolating me first. She took my hand. What do you need from me? She became our spy in the House of Lies. She accessed my father's private safe, photographing the original signed agreements for the Cayman structure. She confirmed Marcus was crumbling under the pressure we'd applied, fighting with my father about money. We had it all. The full picture. The fraud, the conspiracy, the cover-up, the emotional manipulation. Elena moved. She filed an emergency injunction with the court, freezing the Cayman account. Simultaneously, she triggered a forgotten corporate bylaw. A majority of non-family board members could audit any major transaction involving family assets. My mother, as a major shareholder, formally requested it. The board, terrified of liability, had no choice. The walls closed in on them fast. The frozen money meant they couldn't access their stolen fortune. The board audit meant the scheme would be exposed internally.
Panic set in.
My father's calls to Aldrich became desperate, screaming matches my mother recorded. And then, the day of the settlement meeting arrived. They thought they were forcing my surrender. My father, Marcus, and Aldrich sat on one side of a long conference table. Elena and I sat on the other. My father wouldn't even look at me. He looked tired, angry, but still arrogantly sure of his power. "This ends today, Alex," he began, his voice rough. "You take the deal, you disappear, and we can all try to move on from this tragedy you created." I said nothing. I just looked at him. Really looked. I saw the man who taught me to throw a baseball. I saw the man who is now a stranger. Elena slid a single document across the table. "This is not a settlement agreement, Mr. Thorne. This is a notice of civil suit for fraud, conversion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Attached are copies of the frozen asset order, the bank transfer records, the shell company paperwork authenticated by your wife, and the board's preliminary audit findings. Criminal referrals to the DA are being prepared as we speak." The color drained from my father's face. Marcus stared, his mouth agape. Aldrich scrambled for the papers, his hands shaking. "You have nothing," my father spat, but his voice lacked its usual force. "We have everything," Elena said calmly. "But my client has one final transaction to complete." I took out my phone. I opened the banking app. Using the durable power of attorney he'd never revoked, the one Ms. Riggs confirmed was still active, I accessed his personal accounts. Not the company accounts. Not the frozen, stolen millions. His money. The money that funded his life, his cars, his club memberships, his ego. I initiated a series of transfers, one after another, draining every savings account, every money market, every liquid asset held in his personal name. I moved it all into an escrow account controlled by the court, to be held pending the outcome of the cases against him. I worked in silence, the only sound the tap of my finger on the screen. When I was done, I turned the phone to face him. It showed a zero balance. Then another. Then another. A row of beautiful, devastating zeros. What have you done?" he whispered, his face ashen. "You disowned me," I said, my voice finally finding its way into the room, quiet and steady. "You told me to talk to your lawyer." I replied, "Okay." I stood up. "So, talk to him. He can explain the charges. And he can explain how you're going to pay for them. With every single dollar you thought was yours." I looked at Marcus, who seemed to have shrunk in his chair. "The board is waiting for you, Marcus. They have questions about your vice presidency. And your debts." We walked out of that room, leaving them in a silence more profound than any scream. The fallout was swift and public. The headlines changed. Thorne Empire rocked by father-son fraud scandal. Disinherited son exposes billion-dollar deception. My father and Marcus were investigated. In the end, Marcus, to save himself, turned on my father, providing evidence in a plea deal. The empire was saved by the board, with my mother taking a leading, steely-eyed role in rebuilding its integrity. I wanted no part of it. I took my grandfather's rainy day fund and my rightful, clean share of what was recovered, and I started my own small firm. One built on transparency, on real work. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I didn't serve revenge. I served the truth, on a platter of their own making. My father's greatest mistake wasn't betraying me. It was believing that his money was his power, and that family was just an extension of his will. He thought disowning me was his ultimate control. But he was wrong. That text message, it didn't break me. It broke the chains. It freed me from the need for his approval, from the prison of his legacy. The greatest justice against those who try to destroy you is not to become them. It's to become yourself. Fully, truly, unshakably yourself. To take the pain they inflicted and use it not as a weapon, but as the foundation for a life built on your own terms. He texted to disown me. And in doing so, he gave me the greatest gift he ever could. My freedom. And I replied, okay. And for the first time, I meant it.